Okay, hello, and welcome to this introduction to CodeSpark, a coding agent where you still grow. So the moment we're in now is that we're kind of headed towards these two trajectories. The most prominent one now is the first trajectory, which is agent orchestration. And we see this through solutions like the latest version of Cursor, we have Codex, we see Claude Code moving into a native application to become more of an agent orchestrator. And what happens here is that the IDE as we know it kind of disappears, or at least is abstracted. And the way you work is that you give prompts to the agents to build their context. Like your job is to build the context for the agent. And then the agent goes ahead and it writes all the code, and then you're left with reviewing that code. Now, the other trajectory where everything kind of started is that the agents are more like tools. They are assistants. They empower you to continue doing work as you're used to, only you're more efficient. And that means that we're still in the IDE, and you don't prompt to give the agent context. You prompt the agent for it to give you context, right? And then you write the code, and then the agent does the reviewing of that code. Now, I'm not saying that we have to choose either path here. We're probably going to have both. But what's happening now is that we're pushing so hard on agent orchestration that it looks like it's going to replace the traditional assistant trajectory. And I have some concerns about that, which is why I built CodeSpark. So let's talk about that. So the cost of trajectory A, the agent orchestration, is that we have some already known costs, but we also have some unknown side effects to that. So the first thing is economics, and we're seeing this happening right now. Because all these providers of tokens, they have heavily subsidized these tokens. And now they are changing the game. Like now we're actually going to pay for the tokens. But at the same time, that maybe people don't think about that much, is that companies have been setting up these AI budgets. And these budgets has been artificially high because all companies want to figure out how are we going to use AI. So let's invest a lot of money in it now. And these budgets, they are hit within maybe the first quarter, like this year. And when these two things meet, there's been an artificially high consumption of tokens. And then you have like very high, like the subsidies are being removed. There's a bubble here, right? That's going to burst. And at the end of the day, we don't know. Like it's so hard to measure the actual value per token. Like how do you know the value of generated tokens? So then we go to review tax. So reviewing code you didn't write is like a mental effort, but it's also not a learning experience at the same time, because code understanding grows through interacting with the code, not passively auditing it. This is all learning. Like imagine at school if you weren't able to actually sit down and resolve a math equation. You were only going to listen to the teacher or looking at the teacher explaining how to do it. Like we have to interact to learn. And then we have skill drift. So that's basically engineers who doesn't engineer anymore. So through coding, this is how we actually develop system thinking and logical reasoning and get actual depth of knowledge into the different technologies and tools we're using. And if we're left just reviewing things, we stop acquiring those skills. So current senior engineers have it at the current point in time, but if they move to only reviewing, that's going to stop. So in a few years, there aren't any engineers that actually knows how something works. And then we have the responsibility aspect, where if engineers are removed from the actual engineering role, they are need to be put into other roles. So one thing is that has commonly come up is they have to move up the abstraction. Like they have to become product managers and orchestrating the agents. But I also see a path where they become agent experience engineers. So basically, they are responsible for creating the environment to make the agents work as efficient as possible. Basically, go through all the repos, set up all the skills, the MCP tools, and whatever the agents need to properly iterate and validate their work. Now, that might be fine, but the big question is, who the fuck is responsible for the output? So if you have agent experience engineers building the framework for the agents to do work, are they responsible for the output? Or what if you move up to a product manager role or an existing product manager that doesn't know how to code? Should they be responsible for the output of the agents? Because the providers sure aren't responsible for it. So yeah. So what I think is that it's exciting, the trajectory of agent orchestration, but we have to slow down a bit and think about the IDE. Is there experiences there that still deserve iteration? We really need to think about how to increase our own bandwidth using agent tooling and not replacing it completely with AI. Okay, so let's take a look at CodeSpark. So CodeSpark is a VSCode extension that's running the Claude Code CLI under the hood. So it's the same powerful agent that is running, but it's narrowed down to a very specific experience focused on you growing as an engineer and owning your code and knowledge about the actual code base, as opposed to the agent just doing everything for you. So we're going to do a very simple example here to kind of understand the functionality. And the big differentiator from CodeSpark and traditional coding agents is that it creates breakdowns instead of plans. So plans is for you to give context to the agent on what it needs to do, while breakdowns is you prompting the agent to give you context on how to approach implementing something. So I'm going to be explicit about this prompt of giving a breakdown. You don't normally have to do that, but if the task is very simple, just like Claude sometimes writes its own tasks, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the complexity. The same is for breakdowns. It only creates breakdowns when the complexity is high enough. Setting up Vite, TypeScript, React, and Tailwind CSS project. So as it's working now, it's doing exactly the same stuff as you might expect, only it's also instructed to be more of a research agent. So it's more likely that it goes and actually collects information about what it's going to do, as opposed to relying on this training data. So now that we have our breakdown, we can see that our prompt has been extended with the specific steps. So we still have our conversation here, and we can still continue to talk to the agent and ask about whatever we want. Or we can go in and we can start looking at the breakdown. So first, it tells us how to actually go and set up the project. And the thing here isn't that you necessarily need to do every single keystroke, right? That, as I said, like the interaction is where you do the learning. And you can still do that, of course, but any kind of interaction is going to strengthen your relationship to what the information that's coming into your brain, right? So in this case, it suggests that I can run this command. So I can just click it and it will run. And again, we have npm install here. Let's run that. And there's no like sense of completion or anything. This is just like you create your mental breakdown always, right? When you're approaching a problem or an implementation. And this acts as the same thing. The agent isn't here to track your work or to be like some kind of overlord watching you and you have to report back to it. That's not the experience here. The experience is only to be an assistant and visualize your mental breakdown. And then we can go ahead, we can install this other dependency, and for each breakdown step, it's bound to a specific file. So navigating the breakdowns is just like navigating files. So you're always exposed to the files. And then we can look at the next step, which is to add some configuration. Now I could choose to like copy this over if I wanted to do that, but I also wanted to show you that you can still use something called fast edit. So if you choose to code yourself, of course you're free to do that. But if it's a simple change and you kind of already know what this breakdown is doing, right? There's no questions. It's just intuitive to you already how to do this. You can do this fast edit. And then you saw there was a scanning experience where it then makes a change using Haiku. And then it highlights the changes it actually made. So this is not, the experience here shouldn't feel like a reviewing thing. It should feel like you are still doing it, which is why it has this somewhat exotic way of indicating the loading and emphasizing the diff after it's done. It should just feel like a natural part of like a projection of what your mind is doing. So then we have that, and then we can see we need to import Tailwind CSS here, basically replacing everything here. So I'm going to do this manually. And this shows you like how incredibly more token efficient that this approach is from the traditional agent orchestration approach. Because we're running the commands ourselves, the agent isn't looking at the output, it's not executing the commands. In this case, it didn't even read the file, I just made the change. So we're saving a lot of tokens doing this. And then we want to add some other stuff here. I'm gonna just do, maybe we should do a fast edit on this one. Let's do that. It's kind of cool. And this is the point, is like, it doesn't give you the full solution. It gives you hints to what to take notice of, what requires your attention, and it's tuned to be like almost like a teacher, but not in the sense that it necessarily knows more than you. Like that's the relationship teacher-student, right? The teacher always knows more. And this is really important for an agentic experience, is that even though they are very knowledgeable, we don't want to be condescending in the experience, because these agents can be a bit condescending sometimes. And the point is that you are the person that's in the driver's seat. You know the most about this project. So maybe more like a very friendly consultant that has a lot of technical knowledge, while you have all the context around why you're making these changes and so on. Another interesting part to this is that I can always ask it at any step here about, for example, what does npm run dev do? And you continue the conversation within the breakdown. So that means that when you're on the main conversation, you still have the specific breakdown conversations. It's kind of like a global summary of all your messaging. But within each step, you also have the specific conversations. So it's kind of like threads, right? Which is really nice to ask things about specific steps. And then at the end, you can choose to ask the agent to review for you. So I'm going to click review. And then it just looks at the breakdown, verifies if you did the right thing. This isn't a Git repository, so that's why that doesn't work. Okay, so there we have our review, and it highlights we went through everything, but it's tuned to give you suggestions on how to make sure that there aren't any leftovers, things you can still improve, but it's all up to you. For example, here it sees that the app CSS file isn't in use anymore. And then you have, some stuff under dependencies, that's rather dev dependencies. And then you can ask it to give you another breakdown of this if you want to continue. At the end here, I'm not going to show this, but you can also, this is an experimental feature you can add or enable in your VSCode settings, which allows you to create stacked commits. So based on the breakdown, when you're done, you can click this button and it will actually create stacked commits for you. So that the breakdown that you just went through to implement the change becomes the commits on GitHub. So for anyone reviewing it, they can go through the same breakdown as you did, which is a logical breakdown, right? So it's going to improve the reviewing experience of the next developer, and it includes the changes you made within each breakdown, or which is relevant to each breakdown. That's an experimental feature, but what makes me excited about this is that you can still actually do engineering work and learn at and being more efficient. So personally, I've had a lot of challenges applying the agent orchestration workflow into traditional team, cross-repo, existing projects type of development. But this thing has really helped me to actually engage in traditional engineering work and still feel that I'm more productive. And then at the end of the day, we don't know where this is going. I personally do not think the agent orchestration is the way we're going to do engineering moving forward. It just has too high costs, both economically, in terms of responsibility, and that we risk losing knowledge and understanding of how things actually work. But maybe we'll do both. Like, I love doing agent orchestration for proof of concepts, my pet projects, and things like that. It's insane how fast you move. But for actual engineering work, I would prefer that some experience like this is what we're going to do moving forward. Okay, thanks.